I had to ask for access to a bathroom once a month because I got my period. Instead of access to a bathroom, they got me access to a Toyota so that I could drive away to a toilet. So the entire crew knew exactly when I was cycling every single month. And they used to piss in the connecting pipes for me to discover when I got back from the drive. When you're living away from home and you're 19 and you're trying to get the guys to like you, well, it's amazing what you'll accept. And then during all of this, there was a guy who was being really, really lovely and really helpful and friendly. And then on my last night, as we walked back to our rooms from dinner at the camp, he grabbed me and he pulled me into a storeroom and he raped me. And after that, he told me that he didn't want his wife and children to know about it. That was the account of a female minor, 20 years old.
Dr. Skye Saunders is a researcher from the Australian National University. She decided to investigate the largely hidden phenomenon of sexual harassment in regional and remote parts of Australia, where silence, distance, and an entrenched culture of masculinity often heighten women's vulnerability in the workplace. Over the course of 5 years, Dr. Saunders interviewed more than 100 women and employers about their experiences. Her research culminated in the book Whispers from the Bush, which details the pervasiveness of workplace sexual harassment in rural Australia.
As a person who grew up in central western New South Wales, I personally encountered some perplexing experiences with sexual harassment. I became so accustomed to those comments that I almost didn't notice them. I almost took them for granted as being part of the everyday norm. I now have the benefit of hindsight as a person who is seeing this through a legal lens. There are other women who perhaps don't have that same benefit. And for that reason, I started to strongly suspect that there was some work to be done to give voice to the lived experiences of those women.
Help me, I'm not strong. Go where I don't belong.
Grace Bramwell grew up in a small town in East Gippsland. She wanted to tell her story.
The reason why I'm sitting here today is because I'd grown up in a rural area. My family had ties with the community. I really felt a disconnect with the rural area and with the living in the country that I felt so proud of growing up in, and that took me some time to be able to deal with.
Narelle Fraser didn't grow up in the bush, but she chose the outskirts of the sleepy country town Elmore as her home later in life. Having worked as a detective in the police force for nearly 3 decades, Narelle helped women who were victims of violence and harassment throughout her career. But she herself was also a silent victim.
There is a lot of sexual harassment, and a lot of it nobody knows about, because exactly what happened with me, you don't want to tell anyone because you want to keep your job. You would be treated differently. And that, I don't know if that's just the police force. I'm sure it's not just the police force, but the sexual harassment, it really started almost from the day I joined, like even out at the academy. And I was in it for 27 years.
Dr. Saunders reported that 73% of women had encountered sexual harassment in the rural workplace. Just after Grace finished high school, she sought employment at a local pub to save money for university. There she suffered harassment at the hands of her employer.
The first night of work, he pulled the tip jar and he said to me, he was quite witty, that he came up with the idea that I should parade the jar around the bar and it should be called the tit jar. I didn't quite realise how much that would impact my own self-esteem and the way that I perceived myself until I had time to process these events, and they accumulated. So there was instances where he would ask me to fill up the fridge with stock, so I would be bending over and he could slap my ass.
Sexual harassment has the propensity to make you feel belittled, humiliated, to make you feel as though you are the problem, to make you feel as though you are irrelevant, to make you feel as though you are a piece of meat.
It's funny because I was transformed into the victim. And I thought, wow, this is me. I felt nobody would believe me. I felt I would be ostracised. I mean, I'm not proud of that. I felt actually very weak. But I loved my job so much, I thought it would make a difference to my job, and I have no doubt it would have.
Especially in areas where there may be limited employment prospects, there is potentially an impact on your reputation as a woman in a country town, for there to be questions about, why you chose to speak out and why you're making it a big deal and placing it back on the victim.
So we need to be mindful that in educating people about sexual harassment, we are not talking just about the moment, we are talking about that person's well-being over a very long period of time.
In 2016, the Young Workers Centre released a report on Victorian workplaces, finding that sexual harassment was commonplace, unaddressed and preventable.
The stakes are really, really high for young Victorians in regional areas, and this means that they need, even more attention and a nuanced response. So many young workers, particularly young women, talked about sexual harassment as something that happened to them every day. It was so normal that they didn't even bother to speak up about it, which we think is incredibly problematic and probably reflective of some broader issues that we have in society about how we treat women's safety and women's autonomy.
General David Morrison is an advocate for gender equality in Australia. He believes that in order to create cultural change, men must acknowledge systemic sexism and start standing up for women's rights.
It's hardly surprising that women's voices, particularly when they are perhaps in rural environments, their voices are turned down to a whisper, whereas men's voices are given a full-throated roar. Do I think that there are systemic issues within the Australian culture that deny women a voice as resonant as men, and opportunities that are given to men as a birthright of their sex? Absolutely.
But young women are learning to speak up about workplace sexual harassment. Grace decided to confront her boss at the pub in Gippsland.
Every single shift I worked after that, he would just disappear on shift. He, was angry at me, he was furious, and then a week later he said that it was a trial that I was on, and that I wasn't fulfilling the expectation of a staff member to work behind the bar, and that because I had changed my personality and essentially because I questioned his authority, that was a basis for termination. And because I also fought to be able to be on the books and to get tax and to pay tax and to be covered and all that sort of stuff, I guess they realised that I had higher expectations as an employee.
So we want to see education for all year 10s when a lot of people are starting their first job, as well as training young people in how to write CVs and how to present in job interviews. We think it's just as important for young people to know their workplace rights, what their employer's legal obligations are before and when they're starting their first job, so that they're entering the workforce more educated and more likely to speak out, for their own rights and safety, but also for the rights and safety of their colleagues and co-workers.
Grace left her hometown and moved to the city to attend university. She found a new job in a cafe, only to find that her boss was harassing the employees. Grace decided to help her young colleagues find employment elsewhere.
I sat down with a few of the workers there and I helped them write their resumes and their cover letters, and they sought other employment. And then I left work there after a week, and I remember I met with a few of the girls who didn't quite know where to go, and I guess that was another way for me to be able to deal with what had happened to me and use my education as a means to an end.
My advice to a young woman experiencing sexual harassment at work would be, number one, you do not have to put up with this. Your employer has an obligation to provide a safe working environment for you, and that means having training, policies, procedures in place that mean you can say no to inappropriate behaviour from customers, and that you know what to do if that happens to you.
I think us older women, whoever thought I'd say that about myself, but we have to help you young women to show, you can say something.
Sexual harassment in the workplace is a cultural issue that requires a community response. It's not just up to the Graces of this world to speak out. Responsibility lies with us all: policymakers, employers, colleagues, friends, and sometimes even a stranger.
We need to recognise the fact that we can often make a unconscious or semi-conscious contribution to harassment and bullying and even sexual predation if we simply allow these matters to pass us by, for us to take the passive role of a bystander. Because when we do that, we've got to realise that we are actually giving tacit condonement to that action.
In order for there to be true impactful cultural change, that we all need to be able to play our role and really come to terms with the impact that it's having on the way that women of my generation are questioning their own abilities, and how it's impacting their own sense of self-worth and their potential for their own career progression, and when they don't have the support that I had and when they don't have the access to educational opportunities that I had, what are they left with at the end of the day?
Essentially, I would really love to see that we enter a zone where women are able to say, stop, I don't like it, with confidence. And for that not to necessarily take women out of their comfort zone.
The most important thing for anyone in these situations is that they can impart their experiences and, speak freely about them, as I'm doing right now. So then, there's not that assumption that living in the country equates to having to deal with injustices.
The edge of town, biohouse, biotree, biotown.
And I guess I'm using that as a fuel and a sense of source of my own motivation to continuously look into this area of law, and I guess just encourage women to speak, not speak out, but just speak about this issue.
See through my brave face, angel full of grace, angel full of grace. Please show me your face, your out strong. Yeah, I see the long dark night, the long dark road. See through my brave face. Angel full of grace.